Okay, we are connected now.
Okay.
Yeah. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjala Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Sarvadeve Gauravani Kacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dreshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadara Shri Vasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. So thank you all the devotees for giving me this wonderful opportunity on the very auspicious occasion of Annada Ekadashi, and especially glorifying Srila Prabhupada. It's a great, wonderful service opportunity for me to glorify Srila Prabhupada. And I will be sharing a lot of pastimes that I have compiled from different sources. But mostly I think it is going to be from Siddhanta Prabhu's Prabhupada memories. So okay, and especially Mataji requested me to share Prabhupada pastimes because just recently we had the glorious Vyasa Puja of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so starting with Ananga Manjari. So she is also a Srila Prabhupada disciple. So in Philadelphia in 1975, during the Rath Yatra festival weeks, Srila Prabhupada gave lectures about Ajamil. At one point of time, he explained how Ajamil may have or may not have been chanting Narayan consciously. He may have been thinking of his child, or he may have been thinking of Lord Narayan. He was not clear on that. And then he said, Ajamil was an accidental fall down. Later on, in his room, one devotee asked Prabhupada, what did you mean accidental fall down? Prabhupada said, it's when Maya has you at gunpoint. If somehow someone has you at gunpoint, you have no choice. So the pushing of Maya will sometimes have us at gunpoint and we fall down. Prabhupada did not always fault a person for their weakness, as Krishna will still give you mercy if you keep trying. Someone else asked about if Ajamil was talking about Krishna when he cried for Narayan. Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter. He chanted the name without offense, with innocence. Those are the mercy aspects of our philosophy that I think are so basic. If we don't have mercy with our philosophical understanding, we get a hard edge of preaching and we miss out on our own lives by not giving compassion to others. Next one is again from Ananga Manjari Mataji. So in Delhi, I was in charge of getting Prabhupada some lychees. I didn't even know what they were. But one English-speaking Indian gentleman saw that I couldn't relate to the fruit vendor. So he asked, Madam, can I help you? I said, yes, I'm trying to get some lychees for my spiritual master. He said, oh, let me get them for you. So he bought a big bag of lychees and I told him to please come to the temple and meet Prabhupada. So at the evening darshan, Prabhupada was talking about karma. He said, no matter how you try to enjoy, you can only enjoy this much and you suffer that much based on your karma. He kept repeating this concept, and right at that time, the Indian man from the market walked in. Prabhupada saw that this was an intelligent, educated man, and Prabhupada immediately asked the gentleman to sit next to him. I felt so happy that happened. Prabhupada turned to him and said the same thing. No matter how much you try to enjoy, but if you become a devotee of Krishna, then no more material happiness, no more suffering, no more duality. But I was thinking, I feel I am trying to be a devotee, but yet I am suffering in my mind and so many things. I raised my hand and asked Prabhupada, is it to the extent that we are Krishna conscious that it is Krishna and not karma? Prabhupada said, it is all karma. It's all Krishna. Anytime you chant Hare Krishna, you will be happy. And that is coming from Krishna. So he paused and I thought, yes, I understand that. But I couldn't help but blurt out. But the distress took Srila Prabhupada. He said, it is just like the chatak bird. The chatak bird only takes water from the clouds. The chatak bird will not drink from the rivers and ponds. Therefore, the bird is always praying to the clouds, where is rain? Where is rain? But sometimes he gets thunderbolt. We all laughed and Prabhupada said, yes, sometimes he gets thunderbolt. Now, whenever I am in distress or a devotee is distressed, I call it thunderbolt mercy because it's coming from Krishna and somehow it is always for our benefit. In that same darshan, one young brahmachari said, Prabhupada, I was in Vrindavan and they were doing some Krishna Leela or Ram Leela. And all the guests at the end came up and actually touched the actors' feet and put garlands on them. I was telling them that this was wrong. They are not Krishna and they are not Radha. This isn't right. Prabhupada said, no, they are. When they are acting that part, they are Radha and Krishna. They are empowered by Krishna and Ram. It is all right because the audience is not worshipping the actor, they are worshipping Krishna. Just like Krishna can be an oil painting or sand or made out of any material element. So those material bodies are not Krishna, but they are worshipping the spirit of Krishna. I thought that was very significant for all actors and dramatists to understand. I think that some actors have actually felt that feeling of being empowered and of losing themselves in the performance and the character. Another Leela, again by Ananga Manjari Mataji. So this is really very interesting and quite mystical also, magical, mystical, you can say. At the last stages of Pishima's, Prabhupada's sister, Pishima's life, I took it upon myself to care for her. She had deteriorated so much so that when I woke up one morning, I went around Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi and I prayed, what can I do for her? Take her because she only wants to be with you. I can't stop her suffering anymore. I can't make her comfortable anymore. I can't even make her laugh anymore. Please take her. Even if this is offensive, I just want relief for her. Afterwards, I went to her room and she was unconscious. She wasn't responding at all. There were a couple of Bengalis in there testing her heart and trying to give her some Horlicks and milk, but she wasn't responding. When I came in the room, they shook their heads, crying, and they left, leaving me all alone with her. So she was sitting on the edge of the bed, slumped over, and I was rubbing her back a little bit and chanting japa with the other hand, trying to figure out what to do. As I started chanting, I noticed her fingers move as if she was chanting japa. Then I knew she could hear me. I asked her in my broken Bengali, Ishima, do you need to go to the bathroom? Do you need water or milk? Can I do anything for you? No answer. But I knew she could hear me. So I put on Prabhupada's recording of Nitai Pada Kamala because that was our relationship. I went up to her and asked, Pishima, you hear Prabhupada? Pishima grunted, ah. Then I knew that's all she wanted. I propped her with a lot of pillows, trying to make her comfortable as I could. I put the mosquito net around and I kept playing Prabhupada's music. Every once in a while, I would go up to her and ask if she needed anything and got no answer. Then again, I asked if she wanted to hear Prabhupada and again I got the same response, ah, every time. In the evening, the Bengali devotees had called our relatives since they knew this was going to be a last days. They all came in the room and somehow brought all the Gurukulis into the room. They were singing a loud kirtan, jumping up and down, and others were howling and crying. It was such an extreme from Prabhupada singing all day to this raucous carnival. I got the feeling this wasn't what she wanted. I felt she needed peace and calm. I ran outside trying to look for someone to help and ran into Nitai Chand, who was a big sannyasi everyone was afraid of. In my passion, I just blurted out to him, you have got to go to Prabhupada's room and you have to tell everyone to sit down and be quiet. They can play kirtan, but it has to be subdued. With a surprised look, he said, okay, and he ran to the room. I thought, wow, I didn't expect that. He went into the room and commanded everyone to sit and be quiet, which they did. The kirtan then went on nicely as I held her hand on one side and her youngest son held her hand on the other side, quietly sobbing. Then Pishima's eyes started fluttering and her mouth started moving. I thought maybe she was going to say something or that she needed something. I went very close to her face and she whispered, Hare, Hare, Hare. And that was it. I just stood there in stillness and thought, oh my God, that was her last breath. Right away in my mind's eye, I saw this vision of her actually moving up her subtle body, just like you see in the films where you see the ethereal see-through body. The physical body is still lying there, but the ethereal body rises up. Then her eyes started to open. She was looking up at the ceiling of the room, and then she started raising her hand. I had to actually move out of her way. I was still holding the other hand as she was looking up at the corner of the room with her hand reaching out, and Prabhupada came down with a big smile on his face. His hand was held out in the same way as her hand was reaching out, and they held hands. Prabhupada was all ethereal, but it was Prabhupada as we know him. He came down with a smile on his face. She looked at him, and I could see their backs as they started floating up to the corner of the room. I remember my eyes were moving, and they both turned around smiling and gave me a nod and a look as if to say, everyone's coming. Come on, we are all going to go. And they disappeared. The first thing I thought was, they left me here, they left me here. I wanted to go with them. I looked down and I realized that I was still holding her hand, but she wasn't there anymore. I could feel the difference of energy because she was still in her body. I was praying, whatever youthful energy I have, whatever strength I have, whatever goodness or piety, anything I have, let her have it now. Give her this strength and comfort. I was giving her everything I had in my heart. And when it stopped, I realized that energy was coming back to me. She was giving me so much, and she was now with Prabhupada, where she wanted to be. A little later on, after putting a fresh sari and a tilak on Pishima, everyone came back to have another darshan with her by putting flower petals around her and offering prayers. I was standing there looking at her body, thinking she looks effulgent. Earlier, she was looking like a dry up run, just withering away. But now there was light coming from her body, and I said to myself, she's glowing. Normally, as devotees, we don't use the word glowing. We would say effulgent or bright faced. I thought I was hallucinating because there were so many emotional things going on. As soon as I thought that, two pujaris walked into the room, and one said to the other pujari, she's glowing. Immediately, I thought Krishna had let me hear that for a reason because I doubted what I saw. I thought it was my imagination. But when they used the same word, glowing, I knew it was true. It was all true. Krishna, Prabhupada, and Pishima allowed me to see that. And that is another experience that has kept me going as a devotee. I have great enthusiasm that at the time of our death, for everyone who tries to do something for Prabhupada, he will come and take us by the hand. Anyone who has been touched by him. Later on, I had experiences with my father and mother who weren't too fond of the devotees. My father, deep in his heart, was a devotee, but my mother was against the devotees. But when my mother was about to pass, she said, is Krishna going to help me? Then she said, Krishna is here now. I'm going to go and have a picnic with him. She left with the devotees chanting. This is the amazing mercy, and it's all coming from Prabhupada. We are all taking part in this movement, and these stories that devotees have of him, glorifying him, their emotions with him, their instructions from him, are going down in history through these tapes, videos, and books. That I'm very grateful for that. I believe this is the Chaitanya Charitam and the Bhagavatam being expanded. So wonderful realization by Anand Manjari Mataji. Then Pragosh Prabhu is another Prabhupada disciple. He narrates. So in Chicago, Prabhupada told the story of Vishwamitra Muni and how he had performed penances and austerities for 60,000 of years. Then unfortunately, Prabhupada said he fell down in the association of Menka. Prabhupada continues to say that he gave birth to an Apsara, and then he again went back and he performed another 60,000 years of penances, austerities, and then again his penance was given up. Prabhupada said, this is a very difficult process. He said, but for us, the results obtained by Vishwamitra Muni by 60,000 of years, the devotees achieve by performance of Sankirtan. He paused for a moment, look out at the devotees and continued his thought. The devotee achieves by the performance of Sankirtan in a few days only. The temple room literally felt like the roof was going to be blown off. The reaction to that statement was so instantaneous and so joyous. It was almost like saying normally it would take $1 million to get into this building or to get this car. But for the next 20 seconds, everyone in the room can have it for $1 only. So everyone would go crazy, right? Prabhupada realized how much he had satisfied everyone. and he had this smile on his face that was amazing. He was so happy to have made the devotees so happy. Then next one is from Rameshwar Prabhu. A few weeks before Srila Prabhupada's visit to Los Angeles in 1976, I had come back from India with hepatitis and jaundice. I was as yellow as you can imagine. I was deathly ill. I could not get out of bed. Some of my GB Gizri Raw brothers knew at this time, and Kirtananda had connected me with an Indian doctor who was part of the congregation from New Vrindavan. He prescribed a specific diet to cure me of my hepatitis. Srila Prabhupada heard that I was sick and had his secretary at that time, Pushta Krishna Maharaj, called to find out what diet I was on. When Srila Prabhupada had heard the diet, he called the doctor a bogus rascal and gave me a new diet. Within a week, I was completely cured and ready for Srila Prabhupada's visit. I thought it was astounding that Prabhupada had perfect knowledge of so many things. When Prabhupada did arrive in New Dwarka, one of our leading artists, Jadurani, had also gotten very sick. She had gotten so sick that she couldn't even feed herself. We had assigned a devotee to spoon feed her. She couldn't even move. She couldn't walk. We didn't know what she had. She was in wheelchair. She had been seeing a doctor that a number of devotees in 1976 had been going to. He was a well-known iridologist, a doctor that prescribes by examining your eyes for various conditions in the body. He had given Jadurani all kind of medications and diet instructions. Prabhupada heard this and he wanted to see her. We carried her up the stairs to Prabhupada's quarters in her wheelchair. When we got to the top of the stairs, we helped her crawl out of her wheelchair. She literally had to crawl through the door of Prabhupada's sitting room and up to his desk. When Prabhupada saw Jadurani, he told her, "Come here." And we watched her crawl up to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada put his hand on her forehead, but it was much more than just a parent touching a child's forehead to see if they had a fever. So we were watching how intense this was. Prabhupada was holding her head as if it was an instrument that was measuring all the disease in her body. He was diagnosing her. After a few moments, Srila Prabhupada looked at her and said, "You will be all right." And this doctor you are seeing, this Dr. Benish down Laguna Beach, is a quack. So Jadurani crawled back through the sitting room to her wheelchair. We carried her down the stairs, and as we were carrying her down the street to her quarters, she was yelling at the top of her lungs, which she didn't have the strength to even whisper before. "Dr. Benish is a quack. Dr. Benish is a quack." She was announcing it to the world. Within 3 days, Jadurani was completely well. She was walking, talking, feeding herself, and she went back to painting. She had been cured. It was a miracle health cure, like something out of the New Testament. That's exactly what happened. Srila Prabhupada had the ability to cure on every level imaginable. Okay, another one by Pragosh Prabhu. So I met a policeman in the Port Authority in 1977, just a little bit after the Rath Yatra. The policeman said that he had worked on the detail for the 76th Rath Yatra, and he said, "I know that your guru was special." We said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because normally in New York, when there's a celebrity or some kind of politician or whatever, it's really difficult to hold the crowds back. Everybody is getting up there, and we have to have a lot of cops to push everybody back." So he said there had to be thousands of you kids running around there, and when your guru got out of the car and just stood up, he didn't even seem to be noticed. He just started walking towards the carts, and everybody just parted to let him through. It was like Moses parting the Red Sea, and he never even appeared to notice that this could have been problematic. Again, Rameshwar Prabhu. In January of 1977, I was traveling with Prabhupada as his personal secretary. I had a lot of opportunities to have intimate conversations with him, especially when we were traveling by the train to the Kumbh Mela. One particular conversation was about the topic of nuclear war. Prabhupada had spoken about this over the last 2 years, predicting that America and Russia would start a nuclear war through their proxy states, India and Pakistan. This had been a great topic of concern and katha all over ISKCON for some years. I asked Srila Prabhupada if there was any chance of this war being averted. At first he said no. He said communism is so evil, we must force war to happen. Communism has to end. In fact, Prabhupada said, just as Krishna appears to protect the devotees and annihilate the demons. So this Hare Krishna movement has arisen to annihilate the two great demons of our age, godless communism and godless science. So there must be a war to end it. Then Prabhupada sat back and thought for a moment. Then he said, but there is only one possibility that this war may be averted. It depends on your book distribution. He continued to say that your book distribution is creating a spiritual environment throughout the whole world. And that will awaken spiritual sentiments in everyone's heart. And as that awakens, as you continue this book distribution, that spiritual sentiment may bring down communism from within. And then Prabhupada said, yes, and future historians will note how communism failed because of our book distribution. They will note how a revolution, a spiritual revolution throughout human society took place. So next one by Prabhu. So I was on a walk with Srila Prabhupada when one Indian gentleman was talking about Gandhi and glorifying Gandhi's peace movement. Prabhupada said, Gandhi's peace movement was nonsense. The man was shocked. Prabhupada said, you cannot put an end to war in this material world. War is a feature of this material world. Everyone is here to compete with Krishna. So where is the question of peace? No, you cannot have peace here. He said it with such conviction and force that it was like a thud of an anvil dropping without even bouncing. Boom. Another pastime by Prabhu. So another time I was on a walk with Prabhupada when he stopped and looked up with his hands on his cane. The moon was in the sky, the sun was in the sky, and Prabhupada stopped and said, so it is my conclusion that the moon is a cool flame. He looked around at everybody and said, yes, it must be flame. Otherwise, where from comes the illumination? So then he said, but it must be cool flame. And this was the most amazing part. He said, it must be cool flame. Otherwise, why would Narottam Das Thakur have sung Koti Chandra Shushitala, that Nityananda's lotus feet are more soothing and cooling than 1,000 moons? Prabhupada was operating from the position that he is using his reasoning logic in that syllogism that starts with Narottam Anand. Narottam Das Thakur has sung and affirmed that Nityananda's feet are more soothing than thousands of moons. That's the first term in his logical establishment. That's pretty amazing. And he said it is as if it was just simply snaps finger, an axiomatic fact that kicked off a whole discussion about the moon and things that he had said about the moon and written about the moon and so on. He became very playful with the devotees. He said, so have you been to the moon? You have been lately. How about you, Jayadvait Maharaj? Have you been? No, Srila Prabhupada. Ah, you have been. No. So how do you know? What do you know of the moon? You only know what they tell you. So this is our point. We accept Krishna's verdict on everything. They can accept whatever. We accept Krishna's verdict. Prabhupada was just using the subject matters to poke holes in our faith in the material scientist and so show us that really they don't know. They say they know this or that, but they have not gone. They don't know. They are just accepting what somebody else has said. So this was a very important point, and at our tender age at this time, we didn't really understand it. If you think back, we didn't discuss things like ontology of Krishna consciousness. It was explained to us in a very direct and straightforward manner by Srila Prabhupada that the only way you can know the absolute truth is if you accept the Vedic version. Otherwise, you can't know anything one way or the other. So the only way you know is have faith in the Vedas and then apply that, and that have that revealed to you. Another Leela by Prabhu. So once in Vrindavan in 75 or 76, we were walking down the road when Prabhupada saw a pig get out of the water and run off. Prabhupada started laughing and he said, in New York, you have seen that library on, I think, 42nd Street. New York Public Library, very big, Prabhupada said. So many books, thousands and thousands of books. Prabhupada said all about sex. It's kind of funny how Prabhupada would sometimes exaggerate things for effect. And he was brilliant comedy in a sense. Thousands and thousands of books all about sex, how to make sex, how to study sex, the psychology of sex, how to better sex, have better sex. Prabhupada said, Dr. Feud philosophy. Prabhupada said, but this hog, he has not read any books, but he can have sex with his mother, with his daughter, with his sister. Oh, yes, he can do. Prabhupada said, they can make sex better than you, and he has not read any book. So if you want good sex, you come back as a hog. Another time he was walking down the road in Vrindavan and he saw a camel off in the distance chewing on the thorny trees. Just like we read about in the Bhagavatam. Immediately he started chuckling. He said, just see, like our Vyasas. Shri Govind Prabhu was walking next to Prabhupada and he said, don't you meet the Griyamedis, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada looked at him as if he was walking with this cane and he said, you're talking Griyamedis, I'm talking Griyastas. So then he stopped and said, isn't it so much difficulty, so much labor like the camel? He chews the thorns, he is eating his own blood. Prabhupada said, so much labor, so much effort, so much work to have a child, and the wife has to suffer so much, then labor, then the child comes, so much pain. Then Prabhupada said, and then the man, he has to work so hard, 20-year sentence. And 1 year later, the wife says, I want another. Prabhupada said, this is Maya. And then from that, a whole conversation ensued about how some men have to get married. Someone said, you say that all the women should be married, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, yes, that is best. But then some men are going to have to marry. Prabhupada said, yes. And then he turned and he stopped and he looked right at Sri Govind. He put his finger up and he said, but when you marry, you must understand you are doing so under the influence of modes of material nature. With the idea being that it's passion, not compassion, that brings us to that point. Then he said, you understand? Sri Govind started right at Prabhupada and said, stared right at Prabhupada and said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada turned. And as he walked by the camel, Prabhupada just chuckled. It was a moment in time when the Bhagavatam coming to life. So another by Rameshwar Prabhu. So it was 1976 and Prabhupada was coming to visit New Dwarka for the last time. Every morning we would drive Prabhupada to his morning walk, either to Venice Beach or Santa Monica. This particular morning, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and myself, along with Prabhupada's servant, we were driving Prabhupada to his morning walk in Santa Monica. It was typical that we could either ask philosophical questions or we could talk about something in the world news or current events that we found controversial or exciting and have Prabhupada comment on it. This particular morning, a new story had broken the day before that was something astonishing. There was a group of demanded artists in New York that had captured headlines all over the world by having a party in which they served and ate the flesh of aborted fetuses. This artist, the leader of this group, was Andy Warhol, who was famous for sensational shock. We told Prabhupada this story and I expected Prabhupada to comment on the demoniac nature of the living entity and the horror of slaughtering anyone for food. But instead, he leaned back on the back seat of the car and he said, yes, they have not yet learned in this Kali Yuga that human flesh is the tastiest of all the meats. That will come in the future of Kali Yuga. Tamal and I were astonished at Prabhupada's response to this story. It was not what we were expecting. And in that instant, I realized Prabhupada knew everything. He knew what the future of Kali Yuga was. How did he know what meat tastes like? What to speak of which meat is the tastiest is? Our minds were literally, I guess you could say, blown away. We were just amazed that Prabhupada knew everything and I blurted out, Srila Prabhupada, you know everything about everything. You see the future, you comment on things that are current, but also talk about the future. I said, this is what makes your books so unique. Previous great acharyas, they have written commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, but your commentaries are not only perfect for the time that we are living in, but they are perfect for the future because you have the ability to see the future. It's just amazing to me how unique and special your books are. Prabhupada smiled and said, yes, my books will be law books for the humanity for the next 10,000 years. So that is how I think as I write each word. So this is where from, because we We have heard this so many times that my law books will be the next 10,000 years. For the next 10,000 years. So this is the source of that particular statement. Then Praghosh Prabhu. So primarily, whenever we got a chance to be with Prabhupada, we were introduced to him, not just myself as an individual, but groups of men as his Sankirtan devotees. Generally, he would say something like, "Thank you very much," and "My Guru Maharaj thanks you very much." He said in Hawaii, "If you dedicate your whole life to distributing these books, I promise you will go back to home, back to Godhead." He would say this in a way like loving father telling his son a secret. I saw Prabhupada in many cities, and I would often hear him say at each temple, "I've been to so many temples, but I think this temple is the best temple." He really knew how to reach into devotees' hearts and sort of take possession of their heart. When he went to the Baltimore temple, for example, from DC, he did it in such a dramatic fashion. He was in his room in Washington and somehow brought in a picture of the deities from Baltimore. Prabhupada looked at the deities and said, "Where are these deities?" They said, they are in Baltimore. Srila Prabhupada, Baltimore is not far from here. The devotee said, "No, Prabhupada, is just about an hour away at the most." So Prabhupada said, "Let's prepare the car and we'll go immediately." He snaps his fingers and he pushed the table in front of him, stood up and said, "Let's go." So every devotee in Washington got in their own cars and vans and streamlined up to Baltimore. They drove Prabhupada's car a little slower so that when he got there, the 150 devotees that were in DC were now in Baltimore to greet him. Prabhupada came in and offered his obeisances to the quantity deities. Kirtan was going and Prabhupada was dancing in front of the deities with his arms raised. After some time, Prabhupada went and sat down on the Vyasa and began his talk by saying, "So you all are very, very fortunate here in Baltimore. This is a very beautiful temple. You are very fortunate here that you simply come every day before their lordships and you chant Jai Nitai Gaur, Jai Sachinandan, and you'll all go back home, back to Godhead." When Prabhupada said that, everyone's heart burst open and they all cried out, "Jai Prabhupada." The other element that was always there was that the devotees were always saturated with a sense of gratitude to Prabhupada and to Krishna for letting them in that moment. Next by Ballavi Mataji. In 1974, my husband Balwant and I went to the Chicago Rath Yatra where Prabhupada was presiding. In his lecture, Prabhupada explained to the audience why Lord Jagannath came to the United States. He said, actually, Lord Jagannath has come to your country because Jesus Christ was a great devotee of Lord Jagannath. He further explained that it does not matter which names of God that you chant. You can chant the name of Christ or you can chant the name of Krishna. The important thing is to chant the names of God. That was Prabhupada's way of letting everyone in the audience know that chanting the names of God is for everyone, no matter what their denomination. Next pastime by Vallavi Mataji. Before I got initiated in 71 in Atlanta, Prabhupada gave a class with all the devotees present and he asked, "So what are the 10 offenses?" Jadurani raised her hand and said, "Well, Prabhupada, the first offense is not to blaspheme the pure devotee of the Lord." Prabhupada checked her and said, "No, any devotee who is sincerely chanting the holy names and trying to spread the holy names, they should not be criticized in any way." In relation to this, when a devotee asked, "Prabhupada, how can we repay you?" Prabhupada said, "Actually, the disciple cannot repay the spiritual master." He said, "But if you want to try to repay the spiritual master, you do that by preaching." Then he explained how there are 4 ways of preaching. One can preach by his life, one can preach by example, one can preach with his words or with his money. So my understanding was that any devotee who is sincerely preaching in whatever capacity, they are wanting to preach and spread Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, there should be no criticism. Prabhupada really wanted to illustrate the point that we not only do not blaspheme the pure devotee, but any devotee who is sincerely trying to preach Lord Chaitanya's movement and spread the holy names. Then another by Chaitanya Mataji. In 1972, my husband Kanupriya and I took our twin daughters, who were 14 months old, to India. We were going to stay and live in India since my husband was going to work with the Spiritual Sky import business in Calcutta. We first went to Vrindavan. However, because Srila Prabhupada was there, Upon our arrival, the devotees took us to see Srila Prabhupada, and he said, "Oh, so Krishna has brought you here." I thought, wow, I had never thought like that. Krishna has actually brought us here to Vrindavan. He then asked, "Have you taken prasadam?" We said, "No, Prabhupada." He said, "You are following Ekadashi?" I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, I forgot." I told him that the devotees from London gave us some bread as we were standing in the line to get permission to come to the country. And my children were hungry and I ate some as well. Prabhupada said, "Shrutakirti, give them some sweet." I thought he was going to say that I was going to hell or that I have committed the most abominable sin imaginable. But he totally just dismissed it and said to his servant, "Give them some sweets." That showed me that even though breaking Ekadashi is such a heavy thing, because it was unintentional and innocent on my part, Prabhupada was merciful and compassionate not to chastise me. I felt a lot of mercy and love in that lesson of realizing that up the road, if anything like that should happen, in exchanges with the devotees, not to be harsh. Later on, we learned that if we break the Ekadashi, we follow it the next day. But that was the most relaxed I had ever seen Prabhupada because he was an element of the Holy Dham. Later on, he would say that Vrindavan, was his home. Another Leela by Aditi Mataji. I was the pujari in Delhi when Prabhupada arrived from Vrindavan. I don't know why I moved the fan off the deities, perhaps thinking that I didn't want Krishna's peacock feather to fall uh, or his head to get messed up. I finished what I was doing and went into the darshan with Prabhupada and about 6 other devotees. The first thing that Prabhupada said was, "Krishna is feeling hot." I thought, oh my God, how does Prabhupada know that? He said something about the fan isn't cooling or something to that effect. And then he gave a whole lecture on how Krishna, the deity, is Krishna himself. As soon as I could, I put the fan back on Krishna. I realized Krishna is personally present with Prabhupada and speaks with him and tells him things. It was a real eye-opener for me. Another by Chaitanya Mataji. In 1975, my husband Kanupriya went and studied astrology in London for about 6 months. When he came back, he began doing astrology charts for devotees and he decided he should ask Prabhupada's opinion about it. He said, "Prabhupada, I learned some astrology and I want to know if it's all right to do chart for devotees." Prabhupada said, "Oh, you're doing astrology. So can you tell me when will be the date when we will buy our new building for the New York temple?" Of course, my husband said, "No, Prabhupada." Prabhupada said, "That is because you have to study Hora astrology." He said, "That's mathematics and it takes at least 10 years to learn it." My Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, he was a very learned astrologer. He was the last bona fide living astrologer on this planet. He said, doing astrology charts for devotees, you can sometimes know the future. But our philosophy is, whatever it will be, we simply chant Hare Krishna. So best you do not do astrology charts for devotees because they will start worshipping astrology and they'll forget about Krishna. Later on, Kanupriya and his astrologer friends, Jamadagni and Revati Nandan, wanted to have a meeting with Prabhupada to discuss some questions they had. So Revati Nandan, who used to be a sannyasis, took them up to Prabhupada's room along with a cassette recorder to record the entire conversation. I listened to the tape afterwards. They believed that this would be an historical moment in ISKCON that was going to change and revolutionize everything in the society. They asked many challenging questions to Srila Prabhupada. One devotee said, "Prabhupada, you stated that we should follow your GBC. My GBC in Hawaii is homosexual. Does that mean that if he wants me to engage in homosexual activity that I should do it?" Prabhupada asked, "What is this homosex?" Someone else in the room tried to explain what the devotee was getting at, and Prabhupada still asked, "What is this homosex?" Prabhupada wasn't comfortable. Prabhupada just dismissed it. Then they asked questions like, "Well, Srila Prabhupada, you say in the Krishna book, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there were 600 million warriors. What did they do for toilets?" Prabhupada didn't say anything. Then they asked, "Well, Prabhupada, do we have to follow a GBC? Can we live outside the GBC? Can we live outside? Can follow the principles, read your books, and still be devotees?" It went on like that. I could imagine that Jagat Guru having to respond. Then finally Prabhupada understood their hearts and their minds and what they were getting at. They had grown up, they had grown long hair, and my husband had a big beard. They gave themselves astrologer names, Shambhu, Indra, Vyasa. So Prabhupada then said to them, actually, you are more advanced than I am. You do not need any guru, but I do need a guru. Therefore, you should go out in the material world and enjoy. You are no longer my disciples. I realized they were right. It was a historical moment. It was showing that we have a free will. If you don't want to worship and follow the spiritual master instruction, you can do that. Needless to say, it was a horrible time for me. But that was Prabhupada's mercy because they would have continued committing horrible offenses. In one sense, it was very painful, but Prabhupada didn't have to take on the karmic reactions that their future sinful activities were going to reap. Next one by Aditi Mataji. So last time I saw Prabhupada was in England at the Manor. He was very ill and we didn't expect him to come downstairs from his bedroom to the temple room. To our surprise, however, the devotees carried him down on a palanquin. It was kind of a mixture of ecstasy and sadness to see Prabhupada because he was very thin and his feet were swollen. They placed him on the Vyasa for Guru Puja, but there was a heaviness about everything. Not a word was spoken except Jai Prabhupada over and over. Prabhupada the whole time had his hands in front of him, offering respects to the devotees as everybody was crying, including Srila Prabhupada. Then some men carried Prabhupada backwards on the palanquin up the stairs, so we could see him on his way back up to his room. I didn't know it, but that was the last time I would see him. It was like saying goodbye and thank you. But Prabhupada isn't limited to his physical body. Thank goodness, because the Prabhupada I saw in person is also there when I read his books. As far as dreams are concerned, a devotee from New Vrindavan told me, she said to Prabhupada, "Oh Prabhupada, I had a dream about you." He said, "When I'm here, you take instruction from me directly. But once I have left, then I come to you in dreams." I have had many dreams, but in one particular was really wonderful. I must have been reading to the Kirti's book about slipping shoes on Prabhupada's feet. Because in the dream, I am in front of a huge Vyasa and I only see Prabhupada's feet. I slip on one slipper and then all at once Prabhupada leans over, looks at me and I look up. Prabhupada said to me, "Will you please buy me some nice socks?" I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." And then I slipped the other shoe on and the dream faded away. It was amazing because after that, I went to a few temples and devotees would be wearing their chaddars and socks. And then I would see Prabhupada, the Murti of Prabhupada without socks. I would mention something to the devotees and they would say, "Oh, it's not winter time yet." But everyone was wearing chaddars and socks. So from my dream, I realized Prabhupada would like to have some socks too. We have to realize Prabhupada is here for us, either in his Murti form or through dreams. As long as we are sincerely following instructions, he will reciprocate with us. Next one by Udayanand Prabhu. Toward the end, when Prabhupada was very ill, he said, "I want to see Krishna and Balram." Tamal got his palanquin and he said, "Udayanand, I want you and Manohar to carry Prabhupada." Manohar was in the front and I was in the back. We picked up the palanquin to test it and it was really not that heavy. When you looked at Prabhupada, he couldn't have weighed more than 80 pounds. So for us big young guys, it would be simple to carry him on the palanquin. But when we lifted him on the palanquin, I felt I was bench pressing 400 pounds. It was so heavy. I could barely stand up. I then realized what it means that the Guru is heavy. I was thinking, how am I going to do this service? Anyways, we brought Prabhupada out and circumambulated the Krishna Balram Mandir and then stopped in front of Gaurnitai's altar. Prabhupada looked at the deities and then lowered his head. Everyone offered their obeisances. We moved Prabhupada in front of Krishna Balram and then he transfixed on the deities. I was looking at Prabhupada's face and a big tear came out of Prabhupada's eye. Prabhupada then bowed his head and then we carried him back. The devotees were going wild. When we brought him back into his quarters and put him in his chair, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada, the devotees are ecstatic. Prabhupada said, I am also ecstatic. Then Tamal said, Srila Prabhupada will take you out every single day and you will get stronger and we'll take you all over Vrindavan. And then we'll take you to Govardhan. And then you'll get stronger and stronger. You can preach stronger. And then we'll take you all over the world. All the devotees cried out, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada had a big smile. I just very much appreciated the way Tamal was giving pleasure to Srila Prabhupada. Another by Shravanananda Prabhu. So when Prabhupada was going to Nellore from Madras, the devotees guided him to the train with a Shanai group featuring a trumpet, saxophone, flutes, clarinets and drums. So Prabhupada liked the Shanai. Prabhupada was going to Nellore to install Anantasesh on the land that had been donated so we could build a temple there. A short time after he arrived, we found out that they were putting a clause into the contract that if the temple was not built within a short period of time, they were going to take the land back. And Prabhupada said, that's ridiculous. Take the Ananta Sesh back. We are going. Up until that point, the people from Andhra Pradesh were cooking vegetarian for us. But we started noticing onions in the yogurt preparations. Devotees mentioned it to Prabhupada and he said, we are their guest. Ignore for now. So this was another example of Prabhupada's tolerance, always looking at the big picture. Before we left Nellore, we went on a morning walk along with the lawyer, Mr. Trivedi. He was a friend of ours and he mentioned that the Gaudiya Math in Madras liked to talk badly about our organization. He told me that they said that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to spread holy names to every town and village, he would have done it himself. On the morning walk, I was standing next to Mr. Trivedi as he was conversing with Prabhupada. While they were talking to one another, I was whispering to Mr. Trivedi, bring up what they are saying at the Gaudiya Math. Prabhupada turned to me and said, why are you talking when I am talking? When Mr. Trivedi told Prabhupada what had been said, Prabhupada raised his can and said, he has left the credit for me. All the devotees started shouting, Jai, Haribol, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. He had a big smile on his face. I always thought about that for years. Generally, if anybody were to ever say that in the material world, you will have to, you would think that they have an ego. But you could see that Prabhupada was egoless. He said in an ecstatic way, as a servant of Lord Chaitanya, that was a very powerful thing. I'm very proud that Prabhupada had chastised me for talking while he was talking. But I was happy I brought up that point because it was an amazing experience to hear that very powerful statement. Next by Sandamini Mataji. So I was able to go to India in 1977 and when we got to Mayapur, the ladies were giving the rooftop of the kitchen to reside. It had no plastic over it, so there was no shelter at all. Within a couple of hours, a huge storm came. It was blowing everything away and we were totally unprepared. Everyone got sick. Some of the girls I was with from San Diego became delirious. There was no facility. The bathrooms were stopped up and on the top of that, there was a horrible flood. But Prabhupada was there to give class. So the next morning, I literally crawled to the temple. It was quite a distance, but I had to see Prabhupada give the Bhagavatam class. Due to my pain, I was barely listening as I was bending over, holding my stomach for the entire class. After the class, Prabhupada would circumambulate the temple with the Gurukul boys. All the devotees were up dancing, but I was sitting down because I was so sick. I was dizzy with fever watching Prabhupada. At one point, Prabhupada looked over in my direction. And of course, I thought he was looking right at me. Then with his hand, he gave a very graceful gesture to rise up. With that one gesture, he uplifted me of my suffering bodily concept. And I jumped up and started dancing. I was realizing at that time that not only was he lifting me, but he was lifting the whole world. He was lifting the whole world with simple mere gesture, because behind that gesture was all the potency of the disciplic succession of Lord Krishna. I was transformed for that brief time. I was totally transformed into the spiritual world and it was ecstatic. After 3 times around, Prabhupada went up with this entourage and again I crumbled down to the floor. and somehow crawled back to my room. But that was an amazing experience that I will never forget. Next, by Shravanananda Prabhu. So we were violently sick at the Mayapur festival in either 74 or 75. In those days, they were using very bad oils to cook with. Literally, everyone was so ill that we could barely pay obeisances to Prabhupada. Prabhupada walked around where we were sprawled out, and he was very disturbed that everyone was so sick. He immediately ordered that the homeopathic doctor be called. When the doctor arrived, he put a pill in everyone's mouth as Prabhupada walked with him and watched over the process. Literally within minutes after the pill went in our mouth, we woke up out of a slumber of unconsciousness and a horrific disease to being almost fully conscious. We were bewildered and thought to ourselves, what just happened? I never thought about it too much until decades later when I really felt that Prabhupada was performing a miracle. To this day, I don't believe that one little white pill could have made us go from such a state of disease condition, consciousness and dysentery to be standing up and ready to do service again. It was such a short time frame from being so bad to so good that it had to be have been a miracle by Prabhupada's grace. Next, by Shravanam Prabhu. There was a time in Mayapur that I remember with Srila Prabhupada that I can only describe as transcendental. Prabhupada sat on the Vyasa sun and became very grave. It was very bright outside, but in a short period of time, the light in the temple seemed to be disappearing and dissipating, almost like a cloud covering the sun. So everybody became very sober. Instead of singing Jai Radha Madhav, Prabhupada started talking, and as the light changed within the temple, Prabhupada's color also seemed to change. Prabhupada said, in your previous life, you all were associates of Lord Chaitanya. He said, somehow or other, I have been designated or assigned as the captain of the ship. But you have actually done everything to spread Krishna consciousness. Then Prabhupada went into ecstasy. He just sat there, went into ecstasy, and the whole room was frozen in time. Everybody was feeling it because everyone was looking at one another and whispering, are you feeling this? Prabhupada didn't speak for a long time. I don't think anybody wanted this experience to stop. All of a sudden, off to the right of side of the temple, I remember Hansadut picked up Amritanga and he started to chant Hare Krishna. His chanting seemed to break the almost samadhi-like ecstatic mood. I felt some anger towards him for breaking the ecstatic wave that we were all feeling together in this boat with our captain. Later, the devotees went to Prabhupada and asked, Prabhupada, when this happens to you, is this what we should do? Prabhupada said, yes, that's okay. But it doesn't happen so frequently, does it? I can't grade every experience, but I would say this was one of the most directly ecstatic, powerful experiences that I've ever felt. Next, by Krishna Kumari Mataji. So I would only been in the movement 8 or 9 months when I was told to go to Dallas. All of the children there were born in the movement and they had been there for about 5 years. These kids, practically speaking, brought me up in Krishna consciousness. All the children were taught to chant Bhagavad Gita slokas. They were chanting the verses and would hear the meaning. But Prabhupada said the young children didn't have to understand the purport completely, but to have some idea. I drew large cards with a picture that would give the children something to remember about each verse. I would hold the card and they would chant the verse. Then Prabhupada wanted us to bring the children to the temple room on Sunday and have them chant the entire Bhagavad Gita, all together, 18 chapters. I was thinking, this is really going to be a lot for 3 and 4-year-old kids to do. Do we really have to? But Prabhupada mentioned one important reason why he wanted the children to memorize these verses and be able to rattle them off chapter after chapter. He said that these verses are impressed forever on the subtle body. If these children don't back to Godhead in this lifetime, it goes with them to their next birth. So they will have the entire Bhagavad Gita already there with them to help them. So that lesson pacified me. Not only did we chant the verses in the class with cards, but on the way to the playing ground. I had 50 kids and I thought, how am I going to tie 50 shoes and keep all these kids sitting down and engaged? We chanted the slokas while we tied their shoes, while we were at the laundromat, and the kids liked it. It kept them engaged, and I remembered that Prabhupada said it would go with them forever. Next by Sandamini Mataji. One of the things that I really appreciate about being in the presence of Prabhupada was that excitement that Prabhupada brought. Even though Prabhupada would sometimes come with a big fanfare of devotees welcoming him, he always kept a humble profile. Prabhupada was so large and loving that no one ever felt left out. Even though I didn't get to go on a morning walk or have personal conversation with him, I felt induced. He was so inclusive in his personality and his love that it really just radiated from him. So you felt satisfied, even though there were other devotees doing more intimate things with him. You always felt a connection with him, even though you weren't personally present with him at the time, to feel the mercy, to feel the grace that was coming from him. Sometimes people would say that Prabhupada didn't smile enough or wasn't flashy like other gurus, but that was Prabhupada's grace because he was giving the attention to Krishna and away from himself. I'm just so grateful that I was able to be a part of Prabhupada's movement. I'm still trying in my small way to push on Krishna consciousness and push on the wonderful qualities and the love that Prabhupada had for all of us and to all next generations to come. Next by Govinda Mataji, Govinda Dasi. So shortly after Prabhupada sent Gaur Sundar and me to Hawaii in 1969, I had to go out and get a job so we could open a temple. After many interviews, I had landed a prestigious and well-paying job as an executive secretary. I really focused on this job, working for the vice president of the firm, and at the same time getting up at 4:30 and chanting all my rounds. We had been in Hawaii less than 2 months, and now on the job for a week and a half when I received a telegram from Prabhupada. He stated that he would arrive in Hawaii in a few days. My first thought was that I had to quit my job. There was no one to take care of him. I had just been with him for over a year, cooking, doing the house work, being a secretary, and whatnot. And now I had to drop my job and go back to the role that I had to do before, and one that I never wanted to leave. However, I was very upset because I felt that he was coming too soon. Being on the job for such a short time, all we had were two wretched aluminum pots. I was accustomed to giving Prabhupada the best of altered and milk, the nicest of everything. We had nothing. So when we picked Prabhupada up at the airport in our funky old in funky old orange Ford truck, I would not speak to him. Gaur Sundar was driving, Prabhupada was in the middle. I was livid. Hard to believe, I know. I was so upset. I thought, how could he do this? I wasn't ready. I was polite, but not particularly welcoming. My mood was, I wasn't ready and his arrival was premature. And Prabhupada knew because he always read my mind. This was a mystic opulence of Srila Prabhupada's. Once he wrote me a letter from India, I know your mind. He told me that because the spiritual master is with Krishna at all times. So Krishna is in the heart of all the living entities, and according to what Krishna wants him to know, he can keep up with his disciples in that way. He said that if you think of him, he will think of you. In other words, he can't be limited. He can't be limited like ordinary person. If the yogis had siddhis, what to speak of Mahabhagavat like Srila Prabhupada. After about a day and a half, everything clicked back to our usual schedule. Prabhupada would get up early in the morning, translate. I would fix the breakfast, and then he would go for his walk at the bench at the beach park. Even though I was upset, life went on, and his schedule never missed a bit. It was also our custom that in the evening, Gaur Sundar and I would sit and chant japa in front of deities. One particular evening, I was sitting right by the altar with Prabhupada's Radha Krishna deities, and Prabhupada was way in the back corner of the fairly large room. I knew my consciousness was still not quite right, and Prabhupada knew it too. As I was sitting there chanting jap and looking at his deities, all of a sudden a huge wave of realization came over me, a feeling of bhakti, of love, of wanting to serve, of divine love. It just washed over me and flooded my consciousness. With tears pouring down my face, I realized I had lost the essence of bhakti. Although I was standing all the rounds and following all the principles, I had lost the feeling. You can be doing the external stuff and lose the connection. I then realized it was because I had started thinking I was the doer. I was starting to think that you have got to work hard to succeed in the material world. I felt I'm the doer, and this is a philosophy that's promulgated throughout our society. It's all about you and you have got to do it. This had actually poisoned my consciousness. Krishna had left my consciousness without even knowing it, without my even knowing it. And all of these realizations were flooding my mind and my heart. And all of a sudden I realized also, this is why Srila Prabhupada came to Hawaii. He was fishing me out again because he could see from Los Angeles where he was. He could see what was happening. So he came to save me. In the meantime, Prabhupada is way in the back of the room behind me, and of course, he can't see my face. I slowly turned my head around to look at him, and he was looking at me very intensely. He didn't say a word, but he just nodded his head as if he had read my mind and was confirming my realizations. That's all. Not a word was ever spoken. That's a divine transmission. That's what an acharya can do. He can enter into your mind and your heart and completely rewire you. That's the most incredibly mystic experience I ever had with Srila Prabhupada. Okay. So should we continue or should we stop here? So many pastimes, unlimited pastimes are there. It can take hours and hours. Still, we cannot finish Prabhupada's Leelas. So should we continue or should we stop?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for a wonderful class and telling us any pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So I mean, we usually go until 8:45, but 8:30 is the right time. But we can ask devotees if they have any questions or anything they want to share.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like a parrot. I was just narrating Prabhupada's pastime. So if devotees want, I can continue more also for the next few minutes or couple of minutes or maybe for a couple of hours also.
Yes.
That may not be practically possible, but at least we can continue for the next 15 minutes to half an hour.
So, Prabhuji, these pastimes of Prabhupada, like with an interaction with the different devotees at that time, are they documented in a particular book or they are online, easy to access for anyone?
Yeah, so in the beginning itself, I said that all these pastimes, they are mentioned in Siddhanta Prabhu's Prabhupada memories. So he's the one who interviewed these devotees and they have shared their realizations and experiences with Prabhupada. And this is written in the form of a book, which is called Prabhupada Remembrance by Siddhanta Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So see, that's why I just thought that let me just read the pastimes because when you describe the pastimes, you may miss certain important points or because there's so many pastimes, and I want to make sure that I don't want to miss on anything. So to remember all these things, and then there is a chance of forgetting certain points also. So it is better to convey the pastimes as they are, without any. So that is the best thing, as it has been described by the devotees. Yeah, so there are many pastimes. I mean, I have made a compilation of many pastimes from Prabhupada memories, but then there are so many books, and I have been reading Prabhupada Leelas, I think, since many years. So I have compiled all these Leelas, and yeah. So let me know. Should we continue more?
I think for the Prabhupada's pastime, usually, I mean, the people who are in ISKCON and the practicing devotee, they will be benefiting more on this, right? So if there is any new devotee, let's say it joins today, and usually new devotees are more inclined towards understanding or hearing Bhagavad Gita, or Srimad Bhagavatam, so what's your suggestion on new devotees, telling them the Srila Prabhupada pastime? Because they may not understand, they may not be able to relate very well,
Well, I think Prabhupada pastimes are most practical, more relevant for newcomers also because it's a direct experience that devotees are sharing their experience with Prabhupada. So it can relate in a much more tangible way rather than because see, Bhagavatam, you require a lot of faith, Especially there are so many stories in the Bhagavatam, and it is hard to believe in those stories unless you reach a sufficient level of faith. So that's why, and Prabhupada, example is a live example. It's a very current example. Everyone accepts, and they even an atheist will acknowledge that Prabhupada was present because we have tapes and videos of Prabhupada. So there is no denying that Prabhupada was not present here. And because Prabhupada was present, devotees, they had interaction with Prabhupada, and these are very practical and tangible way to understand the philosophy also. Sometimes, like there are a lot of philosophies in the scriptures, and you will not be able to understand it nicely. So you have to, because there's the book Bhagavatam, and then there's the devotee Bhagavat. So if you want to understand Shastra, you have to, there is no other way than to understand through the eyes of the Acharyas. And even to understand the Acharya's commentaries, we require the help of devotees, because we must have Siksha and Diksha Gurus, so that they will be able to decode the meaning of the commentary of the Acharyas for us. But by Prabhupada's example, for example, one particular pastime that was narrated here, where one Mataji, I think it was Aditi Mataji, I believe, and she was saying that by mistake, unintentionally, she broke Ekadashi fasting. But Prabhupada was very, casual about it. He did not make a fuss out of it, and he did not chastise the disciple, because Prabhupada understood. In fact, there is another pastime, and another pastime which I shared, where Prabhupada also allowed devotees to have onion, right? So these are all practical. See, that's why, although Prabhupada said that books are very important for the devotees to read, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Srimad Bhagavatam, these 4 books are the most essential books that every devotee should read. But then reading book is very theoretical in nature. And there, many times what happens, Prabhupada has also given a lot of, because when you write something, then you have to maintain the highest standard. You have to provide the highest standard, because it is assumed that when you read the highest standard, at least you will follow some standard. But let's say, for example, if you become very liberal, and in the book itself you say that, okay, you are allowed to compromise on Ekadashis, and you're allowed to have onion some occasion. Then what happens? Devotees will use it as an excuse repeatedly, frequently, and they will not follow Ekadashi. So that's why when it is books, then you have to have a very high standard in the books, because you are, once the book is published, when it is going in every nook and corner of the world, people, they always look up to this standard. They always expect there is some high standard of, high subject matter is, high standard of subject matter is always provided. So they look up to it, and they have a reference thing also. But then when you see Prabhupada's practical examples, like for example, Prabhupada in, I think, conversation, Prabhupada said a couple of times that during Ram Navami, you should fast, you should observe fasting till the time of Lord, like similar, it should be similar to Lord Chaitanya's time of breaking the fast. With Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's fast breaking happens at moonrise. So Srila Prabhupada said for Ram Navami also the same thing should happen. But practically, when there was Ram Navami on that particular day, when Prabhupada was with the devotees, Prabhupada actually broke the fast during noon time, and he also served. He also asked the devotees to serve normal, regular prasadam instead of Ekadashi prasadam. So you'll see that there is a difference in Prabhupada's leelas, which is, I think, very contextual, relevant, practical, and you will see that there is a theoretical standard which is Prabhupada has given in the books, or maybe in the conversation or letters. So that is why, so one time Malti Mataji also said that not just the books, but it is important to also read Prabhupada's leelas, because then you can get the entire picture. Sometimes what happens, we may be able to follow some strict standard, but devotees may not be able to follow some strict standard. And so we may become a bit heavy on them. We may chastise them. But then later on, when we realize that Prabhupada also did the same thing, then we'll feel that, oh, who am I to actually say anything to any devotee? So Guru is the one who can actually chastise the disciples. So there are many things given in the scriptures. The scriptures also contradict each other. There are statements in Shastra which contradict each other. And then the Guru is the one who reconciles. but the Guru also says different things at different times. So then it is important to understand the context behind why the Guru says something in different time, place, circumstance. That is done by the devotees, the followers. So this is a very excellent way of practically following the philosophical theory of Krishna consciousness, and especially when it comes to Leela. So people can digest and they can hear Leelas for hours. But when it comes to philosophy, if they do not connect and if they do not understand the philosophy, then they will stop reading books. They will stop reading scriptures. So this is what I understand.
Yeah, thank you, Guruji. And I think there is one book actually I was reading about Srila Prabhupada Leelas is Leelamrita. I have not completed yet, like I think 3 volumes so far. I mean, I have. So that's a wonderful book also.
Yeah. There are unlimited pastimes of Prabhupada actually, because although there may be like around, now there may be around 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh devotees, maybe 10 lakh devotees throughout the world. But each and every devotee gets new realization of Prabhupada and they share, so it becomes unlimited. And many books have been written about Prabhupada's Leelas also. So you can always continue reading Prabhupada's Leelas.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's why what I do is I read simultaneously. I read a couple of books. So I read Gaur Leela, I read Krishna Leela, I read Prabhupada Leela, and I read philosophical books. So that way, I am always connected to the Leelas of the pure devotee and the Lord. Because for us, it's a parallel channel. It's a parallel way. Guru and Krishna simultaneously. So by having equal amount of faith in Guru as we have for Krishna, then only we can make advancement. So in order to have that faith in Guru, in order to appreciate what Guru has done for us, who is Guru, what is his behavior, character, to understand that, to glorify Guru, it is necessary for a disciple to understand his pastimes. So that's why I have divided my time, the reading time, into sections, and I read Prabhupada Leelas, Gaur Leela, Krishna Leela. I'm able to do it till now, but sometimes if there is a lot of work, I may have to reduce the time. So yeah, I mean, and I did realize one thing, that Prabhupada Leelas, they are very practically meant for the devotees. Immediately we can apply and implement these pastimes. Whereas the books are more theoretical in nature, they are demanding a higher standard. Sometimes it will not be practical. And there are many Prabhupada examples and Leelas where Prabhupada did make some adjustments over a period of time. So we should know that from that angle also we should know, so that we can become very broad-minded in our approach in presenting Krishna consciousness as well as guiding devotees also. So that is very helpful.
Yep. Thank you, Guru.
Okay, no problem. Yes, so should we take some more pastimes, or we have more comments, questions, or should we stop?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I mean, I can say we can continue, but I joined late because some situation, some sleep problem, and I was not able to rise up. And I really wanted to hear, because since last 2-3 days we've been having glorification of Srila Prabhupada only on the call. And when you said that, right from, I would say, after Janmashtami, so Thursday, Friday, I mean, I don't know about weekends, I don't join, but it's amazing your class. And Prabhuji, if it's possible, because of morning time, and you can send the recording early so I can at least catch up with wherever I joined. That's one request from me. And secondly, Prabhuji, like how I have one question which came to me even on the day of Srila Prabhupada appearance day. A lot of people mentioned that, Prabhupada could read my mind, right? So imagine.
Did you hear? There were a couple of pastimes that I shared from in this class.
Prabhuji, I might not have heard it, but I just
in fact, the last pastime of Govinda Mataji, it was about that only.
Okay, can you? But I just wanted to know that, like, I was engrossed in the pastime, but not able to understand about this special feature of Srila Prabhupada. That how did he enter into people's mind and know what is going on there? Like,
Okay.
there was a katha, Prabhuji, there was a katha where there was a person, he had a dog, and he wanted to, he says, why I can't have a dog sit there? And, so when this person came and sat there, the first thing Prabhupada said is that animals cannot understand philosophy. So this person was surprised that how did this Swamiji know that, in the sense, there are so many people meeting Prabhupada. If he's going to, go into everyone's mind and understand, I mean, isn't it very complicated or very tough like, this is not a sign of like a normal person. He was not, Srila Prabhupada is not a person of this world. I mean, none of us can do that, like we cannot imitate, of course. We follow Srila Prabhupada. But I just wanted to know, my mind is intrigued, that is it because his mind was always engrossed in Krishna and Krishna is in everyone's heart? So through that reason, he was able to, or what is this about Srila Prabhupada? This so surprises me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Mataji, your question is directly answered in the class, because the same thing what Mataji realizes, that Prabhupada is able to read the mind. And then she asking Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, are you able to read the minds? And Prabhupada said, I think she was Govind Mataji or some other, but Prabhupada said that as far as Krishna wants me to know, I will know that much. So it is basically, Prabhupada said, Krishna is in everyone's heart. And as far as Krishna wants me to keep up with the disciples to know something, then that much information he will reveal to the pure devotee. So one thing we should know, see, there is a very important concept here. Prabhupada, first of all, he is a pure devotee and he is not Krishna. So one time Prabhupada was asked whether you are all-knowing. Prabhupada said that only Krishna is all-knowing. No one is all-knowing. No one is omniscient. Only Krishna is omniscient. But here we can see that Prabhupada is able to read the minds of people. But then a yogi is also able to do that. So one thing is for sure, that Prabhupada, and there are many pastimes of Prabhupada. I mean, what I've just taken is just one drop from the nectar of unlimited ocean. I mean, we can continue, for many hours also. So what Prabhupada said that, do you expect that the spiritual master knows that how many sand particles are there in the beach? You expect that the spiritual master knows about that? So one thing Prabhupada clearly mentioned, that you cannot expect Prabhupada or any spiritual master to know everything. That is a misconception, because then what you are doing, you are making him God, and that's a Mayavad concept. So Prabhupada is not God, first of all. Another thing what I have heard is that the acharyas, they are in the category of Shakti Tattva or Jeev Tattva. Like for example, Rups Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, they are in the category of Shakti Tattva. But other acharyas, they may be in the category of Jeev Tattva also. So one thing we know for sure, that Jeev can never equate with God, right? So they are not equal. So who is all-knowing? Only Krishna Balram, Vishnu Tattva. That's it, Ishwar Tattva. But the rest, all of them. In fact, see, there is a very wonderful pastime in the Bhagavatam, the Brahma Vimohan Leela. So you know that Balramji also was bewildered by this pastime. And who is Balram? Balram is the Adi Guru. He is the origin of all the Gurus. So the Guru Tattva is represented by Lord Balram, Lord Nityananda. And that same Balram was also bewildered by the pastime of Krishna. He was also not able to understand why all these coward boys, the calves, they had suddenly they were having so much loving relationship with their relatives, because they were all Krishna. So he also could not understand. So after Krishna released the curtain of Yog Maya, then only Balram could actually understand. So the original Guru Tattva is Balram, and he also is bewildered. So what to speak of Jeev Tattva and Shakti Tattva, right? Ishwar Tattva himself is bewildered sometimes. So Krishna is the ultimate Guru, and Balram is the representative, because Balram is the supreme personality of servitude Godhead, right? And Krishna is the enjoyer, Balram is the servant, like that. So to the degree Krishna wants the spiritual master to be revealed of certain things, to that degree the spiritual master gets that revelation. Okay, so this is directly in terms of bhakti. But then there are some yogis, right? Like for example, we know that in the past, the many sages like Narad Muni, Vyasa, Angira Muni, Agastya Muni. So they were Trikal Gyanis. They knew the past, present, and future also. But they were not like, most of them were not even pure devotees. But they had all these powers, they had all these siddhis. So it is not a great thing. And that's why Prabhupada did not emphasize on this so much. And he did not reveal this mystic potency very frequently. It was very limited time. But we know that a pure devotee can also exhibit all these qualities. Whenever they want, they will exhibit all these transcendental qualities. Or you can say, I mean, not just transcendental, but these are all materialistic, fine material qualities also, more subtle material qualities also. So pure devotees can do anything. So I hope this is clear.
Yes, Prabhuji, this is like this question has been in my mind for many years about Prabhupada. So it's so nice. So the answer is basically that Krishna, however Krishna wants, he will reveal.
Correct.
And best part is like, if suppose Krishna releases anything to us, we think we become Krishna. But with Prabhupada, he never felt like that. He was like always saying, no, Krishna, God is different. And at the same time, he was like, we would be puffed up. Oh, okay, now I know this about this person. And we will feel like great, and I'm God and Mayavad, and all that thing will come over us. But with Prabhupada, it's like, it's totally different. That's what I thought. Like, I was just thinking very intently on this. Prabhuji, is, when you're giving class today, is it that you're reading, or is it on the computer screen, or is it something you can share these pastimes with all of us? How does it work?
So I did share that also, that I'm narrating these pastimes from Siddhanta Prabhu's Prabhupada Memories. It's a book, and I have
you're doing it from the book? Okay.
Yeah, book, but it is, I have compiled all the pastimes in a word format, So I was reading from that. So I also explained why I read all the pastimes, because I didn't feel I should narrate it. Otherwise, I could have missed some important points. And sometimes, the exact description is very important. And so I didn't want to miss that. So I just thought I will just read all these pastimes.
Yeah, Prabhuji, like...
you joined quite late, so maybe you have missed a lot of things.
Joined late. I'll hear the recording definitely. And also, if there's any link you can share with us in our days to come, we can read. And also, exactly the same thing I felt on Srila Prabhupada appearance day. What happened is that by the temple, I was told to speak about Prabhupada. So what happened is that there's a small book of Vandana, on Srila Prabhupada. So I just read it out. I didn't feel like just giving out. It was just about some things about how in 1944, Prabhupada is speaking himself in that small book that I came, and I was doing the Back to Godhead. And then one ordinary person came to me and said that, it's better to print books. So even that portion of his life, what happened with him, I wanted to read. So I just read it out. And that is my, this thing for Prabhupada. And I just felt I should not say anything from my mind. So similarly, you did that. And, and devotees were happy with that, whatever. So yeah, Prabhuji, actually it is 8:45. So we have a Monday morning. And what I was thinking is, if I know that you come once a month, but suppose if we do have, some opening, then you can continue from where you stopped, and we can always have more.
Okay, so let's do one thing. Since you have joined late, let me share just 3 pastimes of Govind Mataji, because there are some 3 pastimes remaining.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Prabhuji, and then we will end. Okay.
Then we'll end. Yeah. A short pastimes.
And also, if it's possible to share the recording little earlier, so I'll be going for my walk, and I'm going to hear that.
Yeah. Mostly I share it the same day or maybe by next day.
Okay, next day also. Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Govind Dasi, again, Govind Mataji. When I traveled with Prabhupada, someone would invariably send him a flyer or a brochure or some form of advertising for Krishna consciousness for his approval. If it did not have this title, Founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, along with his name on it, he would immediately have us call that devotee to correct the error. It didn't matter if it was in the middle of night because it was a significant matter in his eyes. I didn't understand why, but then he explained to me one time that if the spiritual master's name and the title is not put there, along with whatever work we do, then that is the beginning of fall down. That means that the disciple is not acknowledging that everything is coming from the spiritual master. And it can be so subtle. It was a very important issue to Srila Prabhupada. Along that same line, I remember there was a wonderful advertisement done in the early years in the Back to God that read, "This man has changed the world," along with a picture of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was so upset when he saw this. He said the disciple should never refer to the spiritual master as a man. This is aparad, and it's the beginning of fall down. So sometimes when I hear someone say he was a great man, I just cringe. I feel sometimes if I hear this and I say anything, they will think I'm fanatic. But the fact is, that is what he said, and is usually right. So another pastime. In the due course of our travels from San Francisco to Los Angeles, we first flew to Boston and New York, and then we came back through San Francisco before flying to LA. It had been several months, so when we returned, there were some new paintings on the wall, one of which was by Jadurani. It was a beautiful painting of Narad where he was standing with a veena. It looked a lot like Renaissance art because it looked like an angel, very wistful and ethereal. I thought it was great because I had studied Renaissance art in Italy and France. I just thought it was a fantastic job, and that Jadurani had come a long way since her early days. I said to Prabhupada, "Isn't that new painting of Jadurani's great?" Srila Prabhupada, "No." Then he explained to me, "He looks like a meat eater and a womanizer, and Narada is an eternal brahmachari." I was horrified. I thought, so much for my judgment. Then he said, he has got, yes, Galtobra. He said Galtobra means cheeks gone down. He told me that cheeks gone down are the cheeks of a meat eater or a womanizer. He then pointed to one of the Brijvasi prints on the wall with the little round faces. He said, "This is what Krishna looks like. This is what associates of Krishna look like." They had milk drinkers' faces which are round. Of course, Gaur Sundar always used to call my artwork balloon faces because there was no muscular definition. But Prabhupada's idea of transcendental art was completely different from mine. And I had to remember that he knows what the spiritual world looks like, and we don't. According to Srila Prabhupada, in the spiritual world, they have smooth, beautiful faces, long arms, and very smooth, beautiful hands. I think Bharadraj actually studied this type of art more extensively than any of us. But it's very obvious in the early paintings that this type of art was that Prabhupada wanted. There was another incident when Gaur Sundar and I were doing a Gaurnita drawing for making Gaurnita deities in Los Angeles in 1968. Gaur Sundar was a weightlifter before, so he really understood muscle structure much better than I did. He drew Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda with some degree of definition. The pecs and the shoulders. Prabhupada immediately said, "No, this is not to be done. They don't have the same muscle bodies like you're in the Western pictures." This is a concern today because a lot of current artists are not aware of Prabhupada's depiction and understanding of what the bodies in the spiritual world look like. So the last final pastime for the day, for the class, again by Govind Mataji. When we were in Boston, Jadurani sent a picture she had painted of Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. He was seated with a beautiful forest behind him. I thought it was a nice picture, especially the nice green evergreens. Srila Prabhupada took one look at it and said, "She has placed my Guru Maharaj in an American forest." It looked like cold climate trees. And I think that was the beginning of the understanding that we need to make our paintings look a little more like the transcendental realm, which of course is described as tropical mangoes, kadamba, frangipani, and so forth. In other words, all the various plants which exist in Golok. They also happen to exist in Bengal or Hawaii or tropical climates. We become more aware of the fact that we needed to make the background appropriate and not have them situated in a Western country forest. All right. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So any comments or questions?
Very nice, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for, like taking up this topic, where we didn't have a Bhagavatam verse today, but we were hearing about Srila Prabhupada, because Bhagavatam also Srila Prabhupada has given us. So even if Monday to Friday we are not doing Bhagavatam, then it is more than doing Bhagavatam, because we're hearing about person who gave us Bhagavatam. So that's why I completely agreed that we can take up this topic. And in future also, if there is anything like sometime, because you don't take up the topics of the series of Bhagavatam we are doing Canto 6, then Prabhuji, you can still continue, maybe next month again. I mean, just it's my suggestion, but rest, it's completely open to our, speakers to take their own topic or do our Bhagavatam or Srila Prabhupada's appearance day. There's no such thing as a, force like that. But yeah, I wanted to really appreciate, and I'll wait for your recording so I can hear and get more
Yeah,
enlightened.
sure.
And like, one simple point you said, if you don't study books, if you don't know the philosophy, even if you can chant like a parrot, you might exit the moment. You have to get the tattva, the philosophy. Then only you'll stick to it. Then only the chanting will be pure. Then only you'll be understanding the glorification of Acharya and Srila Prabhupada. So that's one line I wanted to add. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Yes,
Krishna,
Mataji.
Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Very nice class, Prabhuji. You shared so many nice offerings for Srila Prabhupada, which was not like hidden. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this nectarian class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for giving me this opportunity to serve the devotees. And like a parrot, I was just sharing. So all glories to Prabhupada disciples who have shared this nectar with us. They have sacrificed, dedication, commitment, everything to Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji. It's so inspiring. And
Yeah.
we learned so many things today again.
Yeah, and this is like just a drop. I mean, there are so many pastimes that will completely blow your mind away. But
yeah.
so many of them. So, anyways, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah, Prabhupada. Radhe.